In this video, we're going to be replacing the rear brakes on this 2011 Honda Odyssey. All right, with a 22mm socket, we're going to take off our rear wheel. Okay, we're going to remove our caliper. We have two bolts. They're going to be 12mm. Take those out now. Now from here, we're going to remove our caliper. What I like to do is use a flathead screwdriver, a small pry bar, and just pull my caliper back evenly, top and bottom. Just work it off of the pads. And in the rear of the vehicle, we're not going to hang this caliper out of the way. What we're going to do is just take it and rotate it up. And now we can remove our brake pads. Again, we're just going to pull them from either the top or the bottom away from the rotor, rotate them out. Now we have two 17mm caliper bracket bolts. We have a 17mm socket on a breaker bar. Now, something to take note of is that there are two washers between the knuckle and the caliper bracket. If those drop out, you want to relocate them and put them back into position. When you put your bracket back in, just be aware that they may fall out. And we can remove our caliper bracket. Our two washers stayed into position. You can just barely see the edge of it here. So at this point here, your rotor should be held in by one screw. Ours was broken off a long time ago, so we don't have to remove that, but now you would remove that screw. Once you have that free, you may have to give your rotor a couple of taps left and right to free it up, or from here, from the back side, and then rotate it and do it again. The idea is to work your rotor off even and right off. Okay, so here are our two washers that we were talking about. We're actually going to take these off. So they go in just like this. There's one. There's the other. We're going to spray a little anti-seize. I'm just going to put a piece of paper towel back here. All right, so what we're going to do is put our rotor on backwards. You can put a lug nut on if you want to stop it from moving. We're going to be gentle. We're going to spray it with some brake clean and remove any of the oils and residues that are on here from shipping and or residues that we put on there while handling it. You want to concentrate everywhere that your brake pads or shoes are going to make contact with. Take it off and flip it around. If you did have your Phillips screws to put it back in, now would be the time to do that. Also, we're going to replace our rubber plug here. But now, we're going to do the same thing on the outside. We're going to clean it with some brake clean, get rid of the oils and residues. All right, so here's our rubber shoe adjuster boot. We're actually not going to put that in just yet. What we're going to do is rotate and listen for drag on our shoes. You can hear just a little bit of drag. So what happens now is the inside of this is slightly bigger than the old one because it has a little bit of wear on it. So you want to check to make sure you have just the right amount of drag on your shoes against your new rotor. And if you need to, go ahead and adjust through here. Ours seems actually really good. So what we'll do is install our boot. We're going to put one side in, and the back of a hook tool, we're just going to press that into place. If this happens to fall all the way through, go through the time and take it out. You don't want this inside there rattling around with your emergency brakes. Okay, so here is our old caliper bracket. You can see we took out the hardware here, top and bottom. We have a lot of corrosion, a lot of dirt and grime in there. We can also see here that our pins don't move as freely as they should. So what we're going to do is clean this up, re-grease everything, put some new hardware on it, put it back in the car. First thing we're going to do is grab a wire brush, and we're going to clean up the channel where our hardware is going to go. Now you can see in here we've done a great job of getting any loose rust and corrosion down. You want to get this area as flat as possible. Before we reapply new grease in our hardware, let's pull our pins. What we're going to do is pull them out until the boot is extended. We're going to pull our boot back and pull our pin straight out. In here where your pins go, we're going to spray some brake clean. Just using a rag so it doesn't splash out in my face. What you can also do here if you want to is pull your boot right out. Give you a little easier access to clean the old grease out of the boot. Set that aside, and then the channel. This one's actually not too bad. There's not too much old grease in there that's chunked up or dried up. So they're cleaning out fairly quickly and easily. With all this residue we have on the rag, we can wipe down our pins. We're just wiping down the old grease right up to this little rib here where the boot sits. We want to make sure it's clean. And we can set that aside. Okay, now what we're going to do is reinstall our boots. Squeeze them in. Now the last step on the pins is going to be a light coat of grease all the way around up to this rib. This is going to help with corrosion and allowing them to move freely as they should. Go ahead and reinstall your pin. Put it into place. And push all the way down. The boot will go over the lip. Keep pushing. And any residue that comes out, just give that a wipe clean. Do it a couple of times, make sure it moves freely, move on to the next. All right, now we're ready to put in our hardware. We're going to do the same thing here with a little bit of grease. Right in the channel where our hardware is going to go. Again, this is going to help prevent corrosion and reduce a little bit of noise from your brakes. What I like to do here is take that rag with some brake clean on it, just go right up the middle of the channel and remove any grease that would touch the rotor when you bring it to the vehicle. We take our new hardware, push that into place. Push it like you mean it. All right, and if you want to, one more quick wipe. And move on to the other side. Take our hardware and press it into place. And come back. Give that a wipe. Something I do want to mention is make sure you have the correct pins in the correct locations, top or bottom. That will make a difference. This one has notches, this one does not. All right, and now we're going to put our two caliper washers back in between the knuckle and the bracket. They're just going to press into place. Okay, now we can take our caliper bracket to the vehicle, making sure not to knock our washers loose, and thread in our caliper bolts. And our two caliper bracket bolts, we come back, we can torque these down to 65 foot-pounds. Okay, now we can put our wear indicator on our rear pad. Just press that into position. And we can put it into our new hardware. And our front pad. Okay, and the last two pieces of hardware are our spring clips. We're just going to squeeze them together and put them in the holes in the pads. Now at this point your pads are going to want to open up naturally. Just get them to the point where they're not popping out completely. And when you get there, we can move on to the caliper. Okay, so now we have brand new pads, which means our thickness of new rotor and new pads is wider than this area here, taken up by our old pads and our old rotor. So we're gonna have to compress our piston. We have a compression tool here. You can use a C-clamp. You can use a pair of locking pliers. Whatever works for you to get the piston compressed. All right, so we can take our bleeder screw cover off. We're just going to use a pair of needle nose pliers. With a 10mm socket, we're going to crack open our bleeder screw about a quarter to a half turn, just enough to get some fluid started. Before you break open your bleeder screw, make sure you have some kind of drip catch down, either a rag or a pan. We're going to have a little bit of fluid come out. So again, with a 10mm socket, open up that bleeder. With that bleeder open, let's compress our piston. Once we're done compressing our piston, we want to immediately close our bleeder. That way we're not allowing air back in. All right, now we can release our compression tool. All right, now we can take our caliper, put it back into position over our new pads. What we're going to do is actually squeeze our pads together, put Push our caliper onto our pin, over our pads, and into place. All right, so now we're going to thread in our caliper bolts. You can see here that our pins have a channel that they go into, which stops them from rotating while we tighten these down. So if you're not able to get your bolt in or anything lined up, make sure that those are in position. Do the same thing on the top. I have to rotate our pin. And thread in our bolt. All right, now we can torque down our two caliper bolts here. They're going to be torqued down to 25 foot-pounds. At this point, we're going to crack open our bleeder screw. It's going to be a 10 millimeter. What we're looking for is a clean flow of brake fluid with no air brakes and no bubbles in it. Now we can close that up. Now what I like to do, once you're all done, is hit it with some brake clean and blow that dry. What that's going to do is wash off any brake residue, so when this dries, if you look back here and you see a wet spot anywhere, you know you still have a leak. And then the last step is to replace your cover. At this point, what you want to do is go into the vehicle, pump your brakes 3 or 4 times, fully as far as you can to the floor. Come back here to the rear wheel, crack your bleeder screw open, about a half turn to a full turn. What you're looking for to come out of your bleeder screw is a clean, undisrupted flow, no air bubbles, no foam, and no breaks in the fluid. Once you get that, go ahead and turn and close your bleeder screw, and you're all done. All right, now with the vehicle on the ground, we're going to torque our lug nuts to 94 foot-pounds. We're going to use a 22 millimeter socket. We're going to go in a crisscross pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.